Welcome to the Rock Your Comeback podcast. I'm Nicole Eaton, author of the books Rock Your Soul and Rock Your Comeback, as well as an intuitive therapist, and I'm here to remind you of your power. This podcast focuses on mindset and inviting the universe in to create a life that feels so good, so aligned, and so authentic. I hope you're ready. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Rock Your Comeback podcast. This episode was so interesting to create. If you've ever been interested in if magic mushrooms can help heal mental health disorders, anxiety, depression, this is a conversation for you. I know I went into it completely curious, but really not knowing anything about magic mushrooms and what they really can do and how beautiful of an opportunity for healing it is when you create a ceremony around it. So I sat down with Rob and Gary. So they run a retreat up in Canada that facilitates healing through magic mushrooms. And it was so enlightening. If this conversation was for you, make sure you share it. Make sure you leave me a positive review. It really, really means a lot. And jump over on the Comeback Club. That's my online membership space. And we're having so much fun over there with weekly journal prompts and Friday pep talks, along with a new masterclass every single month, including all of the old masterclasses that I've done throughout my entire career. So you have access to everything for $22 a month, and come have fun with us. So listen to this episode. Let us know what you think. Let's get magical. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Rock Your Comeback podcast. I'm your host, Nicole Eaton, and today's guests are super cool. I know it's something I'm very interested in, and I know that you guys are going to also love it. I have today Rob, Grover, and Gary Logan. They're the founders of the Journeymen Collective. It's an alternative wellness company creating luxury guided magic mushroom retreats at their center in British Columbia, Canada. So since 2018, they've been hosting CEOs and entrepreneurs, athletes, actors, couples invested in the highest level of self-discovery and personal development through psilocybin plant medicine. So with a combined 60 plus years, you guys are here to teach me because I am somebody who's super, super fascinated and interested in this, but I've never done it. So welcome, Gary and Rob.
Thank you, Nicole. This is great. Very exciting. Where do you want to start? Do you start right at the beginning or in the middle? Or
yes. Okay. Well, take me back into even how you get interested in obviously I'm aware that even as a mental health counselor, I'm aware magic mushrooms are magic. I know that they can be really healing. I also know that the idea of being really out of control in my body, that scares me as well. So I think, how do you stumble upon this as your life's work is, I guess, where we'll start.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we keep asking the same question.
So both Gary and I, we've been on a journey of personal development, spiritual development for many, many decades. And we thought we had enough tools in our toolkit to deal with anything. And then in 2017, we got married and our life shifted massively in a good way. It was like a rocket took off. And as that rocket took off, Gary's mom, who lived with us for 3.5 years, she passed away very quickly in a span of about 3 weeks. Her health declined. And then all of a sudden we were living in a house that was for a family. And then it was literally Gary and I and our cat. And it was the first time that we had lived with someone that passed away. And it was waking up every day and seeing the door that was always half cocked open being fully open, and there's no one there. And I had experienced death and grieving before, but this was a totally different level. And it was a firm wake-up call of your life and your time here is freaking short, so make it valuable because it can leave very quickly. And there was depression, there was grief. Gary was experiencing anxiety, and this lovely little tiny human came into our lives and said, I think you might want to explore working with the medicine man that I've been working with. And she told me a little bit about it. And I just sort of said, no, I don't think so. I had experienced psychedelics in university about 20 years prior. And I thought I knew what I was talking about, and I had no context for what was actually going to unfold. And so about 4 or 5 months after she had suggested it, I got the inner ping of it's time to embark on a journey. And so I spoke with the medicine man, went and worked with him for 2 full days, and that was it. It was just 2 full days. And I found my joy again. The depression had lifted, the grief had gone. I found a new centering for my dedication and devotion to my clients that I was working with at an executive coaching level. And I was like, this is the next step. This is what I'm supposed to train in and learn how to guide in my own way. And that's part of what I was shown as well. This is the next iteration. This is the next version. And so I went home and I didn't tell Gary about the guidance part, but I shared a lot about just how the joy was there again. I had found that I'd been reinvigorated and I just felt like this was it. I went home, Gary saw the shift, and that's when I typically pass it over to Gary.
Like when he came home, I was like, holy like mushrooms can do this. But I think it was the right time, right place, right message. And so I spoke to the medicine man and myself, and I had a conversation with myself. Is this something I really need to do? And I couldn't shake the anxiety, which I've never experienced before. And it was like a little bit overwhelming and a little bit scary at times. It's like, what is this? So I embarked on a journey. It tied in with the celebration of life for my mother. We spread her ashes into the ocean somewhere in the Pacific. And I know technically you're not supposed to do that, but they just fell into the container. And oops. And that was a beautiful ceremony. And the next day I went on my journey with the medicine man, and it was my birthday. And I always say it was the best birthday gift I ever gave myself. I think everybody needs to gift this experience at least once in their life. After the 3-day experience, I came back home and said to Robert, I've had a vision. And if your listeners don't know what a vision is, it's like this movie screen in front of your eyes that is playing out during a journey or during a ceremony. And the vision was Mother Gaia came and spoke to me. And I went through the shamanic burial and resurrection. And I said to Robert, this is what we're supposed to do, because she handed me my shaman's walking stick and said, you're good to go. And I go, good to go where? She goes, you're good to go on your own to lead this path for others. It was so clear. And so Robert shared that he had a similar message come through to him. And we looked at each other as like, what does this look like moving forward? And that comes back to your question. How did this start, and how do people embark on a pathway of work, in quotations, to carry on in life that is successful? So we worked with the medicine man for a number of months. We did a number of beta launches with people that we knew, people that were interested in a process, and then we worked it out that what he offered wasn't quite what we are going to present forward. And then that comes into the development of the Journeyman Collective.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
I need to know what happened in those 2 days. I need to know, what were you guys doing? What were you talking about? Like what was that process like?
Yeah, we love to share, but the thing is, it depends what your listeners are like with you. If you've had no experience of a sort of, we'll call it a psychedelic journey, it's hard to put it into context.
Because each person receives their own unique data set.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is, we had a vast experience of meditation and an ability to go into stillness. So when at the top of our call today, when you were speaking about you're afraid of losing control, and people have been imprinted with this idea that you're going to be running around like crazy and you're not going to be able to control your body, you're going to be running into walls and you're going to lose your mind. And that's not what it's like at all. So if I can paint an image in your listener's mind of what does a ceremony actually look like, you have ingested magic mushrooms with intent, with respect for the medicine, and with guidance. So those three pieces are vitally important, and that's a game changer, because I had experienced mushrooms back in my university days, and it was always a fun trip. This was a journey of going inward, and I just intuitively knew to lay in stillness. So I was still for many, many hours, and I was in deep contemplation. My eyes were closed for the most part, and I was essentially shown a lot of different TV episodes, shall we say, different inner visions and different experiences. And some of them dealt with ancestral trauma. Some of them dealt with basically what I would call a rebirthing of who I am and that new version of me. So there's a deep clearing of old ideas, old energies, but also an amplification of different habits that you might be exuding out into the world. So it'll highlight different things that, like, it's basically showing you in a spotlight of, hey, look at this habit, look at this way of you're operating in the world. And as a function of that, you get to make a choice after the ceremony to actually make a change or not. And so with that whole highlighting and dissolving away of the old, that's where new space is created within self to, it's almost like the onion of the human being, maybe not the greatest analogy, but it's like getting rid of the old skin so that the new skin can come forward. And that's what life and growth is all about. So the mushroom itself, it's a mushroom that grows in the forest. And what does it do in the forest? It decomposes that which is no longer necessary in that ecosystem. So when the human ingests it, it highlights and decomposes that which is no longer necessary for you. And we don't live in a culture now that allows us to go through, I would call, initiations. I'm not talking about hazing rituals. This is initiations whereby you've gone through a chapter of your life, that chapter's ended, and now we're going to clear out the baggage from that so that you have room to move forward and create that new version of you in that next chapter of life.
So from what I'm understanding, that you can have this journey that you go on, but you still have to come to the end and make some choices, right? Okay.
Yes, totally.
Yeah. It's not just coming in for an experience, because there's plenty of opportunity to do that out in the world. We're totally different. Where you're coming in, it's going to be work, and there is homework. And it comes down to whether you're able to make that choice to say, yes, I'm willing to shift out of the way I was living to create my true path forward in life.
And again, to create an image in your listeners' minds with the Journeyman Collective, you're given a unique data set of experiences that we teach you how to weave, or in the case of something that doesn't serve you, unweave that experience out of your life, but weave the brilliance into your life. So it's taking all of those different experiences, and we say that when you work with us, you may only ever come on one journey in your whole entire lifetime, and you're given enough data and information to use for the rest of your life. And we teach you how to touch back into that data set, into that experience, and continue to implement and integrate the experiences into your life. So you're almost mining the data that you've received, and you're unzipping those files continually for your own growth. And it's typically applied into one of three avenues, or all three: life, love, and business. And all three of those are connected to your relationships. So as you relate better and more clearly to you, because you've given yourself that time to clear out the old, then you are more aware of what's potentially going on with someone else. You have greater clarity, greater awareness and attunement to what they're saying, what they're not saying, and your relationships will change. Because you've been vulnerable with yourself and allowed yourself that time to be vulnerable, you will have a greater capacity to be vulnerable with others, to ask those potentially hard questions that you would have skirted around previously. And it's a game changer for your relationships, and it shifts like people that may be on the brink of divorce or just having problems with their spouse or their children, and they don't know how to relate to their children. And yeah, it's an absolute game changer.
I mean, it almost sounds like too good to be true on some level, right? Like, I hear you say I'm going in with all this anxiety and depression and I'm coming out feeling like the most joy. And what are the downsides to it, if there are any?
Silence.
The downside is when you come in with too many questions, too much anxiety, too many maybe fears still coming out. We try to prepare you as much as possible to release the fear. And when you come to the center of the Journeyman Collective, you're in a space that is safe and for you able to just rest into self. So the downside is there's always something that happens. It doesn't matter whether it's a down or an up. It is what it is. And then you get to work from that point of reference.
Yeah, I think the downside would be that if you're coming into this with a preconceived notion that this is going to be the silver bullet and it's going to fix me once and forever, and I'm never ever going to have to look at myself, I'm never ever going to have to self-reflect, I'm never going to have to take responsibility for who I am, that's where the downside comes in. However, with us, people are prepared. We get to know everyone that we work with at a very deep level, and it's a very quick recognition that, oh, I'm responsible for, again, I'm responsible for that data set that I'm going to be given. And I am going to take that responsibility to work with it so that I can continue to evolve. So it's essentially, we're giving you a tool set. And the downside is when you're not willing to work with that tool set. So the people that we work with are always committed to that process. And it's like, we just worked with a client this past weekend and he was like, I didn't quite get it before I came as to what you were really talking about. He was like, Rob, you were really literal with a lot of what you were talking about. Now that he's come through, he understands it more. And it's one of those things that you can only truly understand it once you've come through it. And when you're looking at human behavior, because that's essentially what you're looking at in your journey as well, the behavior of self. And there's the shadow or the unconscious, subconscious part of a human being. And there's obviously the conscious part as well. But I can see your subconscious energies playing out with you. But unless you're willing to see it and look at it, then there's no way that I can see your subconscious for you. So when you experience it and experience those habitual ways of thinking and feeling and moving and acting, when you actually see it, when you have the experience of it, that's where you get to say, there's the pattern in my consciousness that needs to be disrupted and rewritten. And then you become empowered to actually continue to work with it, because it's going to show up again and again. And hopefully the time that you spend in that undesirable pattern is going to shorten. And then eventually it won't even be there because you've rewritten the program of your life.
Part of what we do with Rock Your Comeback is really talk about your mindset, your subconscious, your intuition, and all of those things working together. So this sounds like an additional awesome tool to add in there to create a heightened sense and a more compact, if I will, sense of awareness. Like, here's your dedication to really getting to the bottom of things. This is your time to do it. This is your safe. And, honestly, I think just the idea of people coming intentionally to work on their healing in a safe space isn't something that most adults do anyway. That would be nice. You know what I mean? So it sounds like you've got all these incredible pieces interwoven together. I'm curious for both of you, have you always been spiritual and intuitive? Is this kind of a new phase of your life, or what does that look like for you?
I'd say 1979, after I graduated from high school, I enrolled in a theater program. If you know anything about theater, they're going to basically take away all your bad habits of unconsciousness stuff that you're doing to build the true self so you can represent any character or role as you move forward in life in theater and film. So I embarked on a 2-year journey of releasing trauma, I guess, from my father and my parents' upbringing and their teachings. We always say we are their teachers, and we do learn from them also. Um, After that, I moved to England probably 5 years later after I graduated and went to another theater program. And in that program, I was introduced to the Alexander Technique. It's a mind body conscious awareness training, sort of that's in a nutshell. And it works on your habitual patterns of dysfunction and looks at what can I do to move forward in life in a free, moving, clear thinking way of being. I've been teaching for 20 years and probably with the process 35, 40 years. And in that time, I did embark on metaphysical teachings at a spiritual center called Unity. And when I was introduced to the minister, we'll call him, I always call him a teacher because he delivered a lecture and not a sermon. And it was at home. This was home for me. And I understood what the message was coming about. And for probably 25 years now, I've been with that sort of thought process of metaphysical teachings. And in that time, I also embarked on a 2-year teaching program for healing touch. And that was done through Vancouver General Hospital with the nurses. So again, it was another layer of myself that I was revealing and awakening within that I had this gift. And then I brought that all together and through the journey process was awakening again to where we are now with the Journeyman Collective.
Mm-hmm. And then for me, I was very, very scientific. And at one point in my life, I had essentially cast anything spiritual out to sea and was not ever going to touch it. And I was like, I only need science. And I've done an undergraduate degree, a master's degree in science, and specifically earth sciences, and worked in the petroleum and mining industry, but always felt like it wasn't quite my place. And in 2003, I had what some would call an awakening. And in that awakening, I started to see energy around people and didn't have any context for what the heck was going on with me. And the Modern Medical Institute had no way to actually help me either. They all just said, no, there's nothing wrong with you. 2003, I found a spiritual teacher, and that's when things started to click into place. Like, oh, so she told me very point blank, you're supposed to be seeing what you're seeing. And when that happened, it was like a green light was turned on within my being. It's like, I must understand more of this. I must study more. I must learn more. And I enrolled in anything and everything that called to my heart and soul in the world of spiritual and metaphysical development. And looking back, I think both Gary and I have always been empathic. But again, when you're raised in a family, in a society that doesn't even know what the word empath is, more people are aware of it today. But I think both of us were always empathic and we were unconsciously empathic. And so that was always there. And we had this innate perception of how nature worked. And then for your listeners, look at your hands, look at your body. You are nature. We become disconnected from it. And that's part of why I think I just had an innate understanding of earth sciences and biology and even calculus and physics. It was super easy for me. And that's where we weave a lot of what Gary has done, a lot of what I have done in the corporate world, in my personal life, and we weave it all together. So all of these different strands of who we are come together to create a very high level experience, a very high standard of care, a very high level of integrity for people to come through. I think one of the most important experiences that someone can have in their lifetime. And most people, when they actually do take that opportunity to come into a journey, and especially with the Journeyman Collective, they recognize that it was the major pivot point in their life, that major point of, hey, I just up leveled and upgraded my life. And now I've been given this inner tool set, this inner connection with my intelligence within my heart that I can bridge with the intellect of the mind. And that doorway has been forever opened so that I can continue to access and blend those two worlds so that I learn how to synthesize energy in all of my relationships and all of my interactions. And then I also dedicate myself to really refining my being of who I am. And then all of that is funneled into a vision. Like, where are you going with your life? A lot of people, if you ask them, they don't actually know. So this is something that both Gary and I we've always had that inner barometer of like, we know where we're going and we're going somewhere. And that's the pull that creates that growth. And a lot of people are deeply, deeply fearful of letting go, of losing control. And what they're actually fearful of losing control of is the current version of who they are. And it's the box that they've put themselves in, the way that they think, the way that they feel, the way that they act. And even though they may be deeply uncomfortable with who they are right now, they're still comfortable with where they're at now because it's easier to stay there than actually to step outside and grow and shift and up level that version, because it is deeply uncomfortable to let go, lose control of who you are, and step into that next iteration of you. But in the grand scheme of things, it's in service to those that are around you. So if you can be better and learn how to be better every single day, then why not?
I truly, and I love that you pointed out that you were not always super intuitive, because people listening, they're, talking about going on a journey and having these pictures in your mind. And so, most of my listeners are vibe with that, right? But there's plenty of people who probably could use a little boost or an extra tool in their tool bag, who are maybe teetering on, I don't know what I believe with my intuition or spirituality. I don't know what that looks like for me. So I love that you kind of talked about your journey. And I also love that you said earlier, like when that first got brought to you and you were like, no, no, thank you. And then there was this moment where you had your inner ping, is the word you used, which meant it was time. And I think that's cool that our intuition can say no to something the first time because we're not ready and we're not open and we're not in the place to receive the things that we're meant to receive from that experience. And then maybe even a couple days later, maybe even a week later, maybe even a month later, that can change. And I always like to remind people that a no with your intuition is not always a no permanently.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a no for now. It's a no in this moment. And yeah, I think that's an important piece to keep in mind if you guys are interested. Now, I obviously had a little bit of a wild teenage years. I don't know why I said obviously, but probably expected. I had a wild teen years. And so my previous experience with magic mushrooms wasn't the most positive experience. So how do you guys source and ensure that your mushrooms are like, if somebody's listening to this, they have obviously the option to go to your retreat and check it out with you. If they're tempted to get it elsewhere, like what would you advise them to look for so that we're not just buying weird shit off the street? Do you know what I mean?
Totally.
Yeah.
Good question.
Always, 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 always know your source.
We always say, get to know your gardener.
Yes.
Yeah.
And with that, it's vitally important of who they are, because their energy will impact the actual medicine as well. And always have a guide with you. Always have a guide with you. Always have not a sitter. I'm talking about a guide whereby they can actually help you navigate what's going on the inside, because there are things. Pardon?
Like, what would be the guide's role? So they will like, are you in this position where you're like talking out loud? Are you?
It varies. A lot of the conversation will happen mind to mind, heart to heart, and we're all in silence. And the guide's responsibility is to keep the energy moving. So when someone has a bad experience, most of the time They don't have a guide with them who has awareness of energy and can feel and sense where there's stagnation or where someone might get stuck in a loop. So the bad trip that you often hear about is because someone gets stuck in one thought process for 4 to 5 hours. By taking a few grams of mushrooms, you're basically hooking yourself up to a giant fire hose. Anything can come at you, and it's vitally important to have someone there who can maintain the integrity of your environment, both on the outside and the inside, with a high degree of care. If you are thinking, oh, I can just do this on myself, good luck, because it is a game changer when you have someone there with you to create that space for you. And the more deeply that space is held for you, the more deeply that you can go within self. And then the more deeply you can go within self, the more that you can expand into your life. And what we have witnessed again and again and again and again when people come and work with us is that there's a massive reset that takes place. And it's a reset to balance. Most people are looking for that balance in their life and they may not even know it. The balance looks like inner peace, inner contentment, freedom from depression, freedom from anxiety. And there's a piece of all of that that you can do mushrooms on your own. However, again, we've witnessed that a large part of the growth takes place outside of the ceremony of like, what the heck just happened? So most of our culture doesn't have context for what they have experienced, and then they just chalk it up to, well, I just had a trip. It's no big deal. I just saw some things. No, that information was presented to you so that you can use it, apply it, unpack it, work with it for the rest of your life. And then people don't know how to rebuild that inner house of self because they may come out of the journey and be totally confused. And then we're with you to let you know, it's like, hey, confusion is supposed to happen because the new neural networks are forming in your brain through this experience. And those new neural networks are like highways. And so your being, your body, your consciousness doesn't quite know what it is because it's new. So it can be very frightening for people when they do it on their own. And then there's no value that's received from the experience if you don't know how to wield that fire hose.
Yeah. So let's say I come to your retreat. How frequently are we doing this? Like what does this, this journey look like at your place?
So we'll start right from the beginning. You would apply to connect with us online. You would go through the first interviewing process, and then you would be connected with Rob and Gary. And then we would work with you for approximately 4 months. The first set would be a month of prep work with us on Zoom once a week. And then from there, after the 4 weeks have completed, you would come and see us at the Journeyman Collective Center, and you would spend 4 full days with us. 2 of those days would be in ceremony, and 2 of those days would be in integration. And on the fifth morning, you would depart. People say they sadly depart, but they're very excited to get back into the new world to apply what they were shown and seen in the journey process. And then after that, we give you about a week to settle back into life. And then we're with you integration calls once a week for a full month. And then after that, we're take the training wheels off, we say, and with you once every 2 weeks for 2 months. So overall, it's a 4 month offering that we present.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot of support. That's amazing.
And the thing is, we call it the collective. The collective is always growing. And we're still speaking with clients from 6.5 years ago. We'll get a ping or they'll call us and say, can I speak with you? And sure enough, if we have time, we jump on Zoom and see where they're at, see where they're going, and see how we can be of assistance to them.
Mm-hmm. And the other string I want to pull on there is that the support is required. So if you look at the traditional medicine man, the medicine man lived in the village with people and was there to support you in preparation and afterwards. Our current culture doesn't have that support in our communities. And we hear stories of people going on ceremonies or journeys, and then being like, I don't even know what just happened. And that's where your relationship with the medicine man or your professional guide is of utmost importance, because there are things that we were talking about this the other day, like every single journey that we have facilitated in 6.5 years, if a client jumps on a Zoom call with us or has coffee with us here in town, we can almost instantaneously drop back into different pieces of their journey and help them continue to distill that process and continue to learn from it. So that's where your relationship with your guide is of utmost importance and is really going to help facilitate growth in your life. So do your due diligence and know who you're coming into your ceremony with, and that it's not just a ceremony. There should be extensive support there, because it's an immersive experience that most people have no context for because it's not part of our culture. So that's part of why we're even called to be on this podcast today, is to educate people to like, hey, you need context. You need someone there to support you through that experience.
And to be clear with your listeners, we work with solo clients or in couples, and no more than 4 people at a time.
Mhm.
So the space is very sacred. We don't do massive journeys that you could probably see elsewhere in the world, and they have their purpose. And most people like to go on those experiences, and we're there. If they come back and say, I put my toe in the water, but I know I can go a little bit deeper and swim a little bit further.
That you read my mind. That was my next question, because I'm super sensitive to energy. So for me, like opening my energy field even more than it's already open feels really vulnerable to me. And I'm really mindful of like who I'm around in that process, especially if other people are, clearing out old versions of themselves and heavier energies, that would be something that I would be very aware of.
Perfect, because we are aware that when we're online with you, and it's not a tick box when you apply saying, I went June 24th to the 26th, I'm going to be with you. It's not like that. We sense who you are, and then we see who is available to bring together in a group journey of 3 or 4 people. And sometimes people say, I want to go on a group journey, and then they're in the calls going, no, I want to jump back into a solo journey, and they want this process just for themselves and private. And it is a private. But when you're with us, you have your own space. You're given the space to work within it, and nobody's really polluting or doing their stuff that's going to interfere with your journey at all. It's very well contained in each sort of capsule, we would say.
Yeah.
This is so interesting, and I know that the readers are going to want to come to work with you both. How can they best do that? I'll drop all of the links in the show notes. So if you guys are hearing this and you're like, yes, this is a yes, full body ping, they'll be in the show notes, but just verbally, where can they find you?
We have a great website called www.thejourneymancollective, one word, and Instagram, Facebook, all the same. It's highly important that if you do come to our website, do read as much as possible. Do your due diligence to research wherever you're going to go in the world, and really talk to the people that are going to do the ceremony with you. And if it's sure, it's very unique to have a shaman from Peru sit in ceremony with you, but does that shaman really have a connection to you and know what your purpose is? I know it's individual, and it's all self-reflection. And does he need to know? Well, we feel that we need to know who you are to assist you on this guided journey of life.
It sounds like you're creating a really incredible, like I said, just creating a space to intentionally go to heal, I think is one of the most powerful experiences. Add all of this plus your loving, compassionate energy that you both clearly have. It sounds like a really incredible tool for anyone who's listening on their healing journey. I'm really grateful. Thanks for answering all my crazy questions today. I'm so interested. I'm sure I'll be reaching out.
Brilliant.
Thank you for your time and space today, all. Thanks for listening. Make sure to get a copy of my latest book, Rock Your Comeback, The Down-to-Earth Guide to Reclaiming Your Power, just about everywhere books are sold. Join the Comeback Club for exclusive access, masterclasses, and more. And I always love to know what you think, so make sure to shoot me a DM or leave me a review. Thanks for listening to the Rock Your Comeback podcast. I hope you're feeling inspired, motivated, and ready to take on the world. Now go step back into your power. The world's been waiting for you. But first, if you could, leave me a review or share with a friend. Thank you.